We'll call the meeting to order. May we have roll call, please?
Yes. Present tonight we have Kathy Moore, Darrell Lopez, Bill Sheridan, Tommy Minton, Matt Young. Absent tonight we have Lawrence Wright and David Pollock.
Thank you. If everyone would check your cell phones and make sure they're turned off. Thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the March 14th, 2017 meeting.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes as is.
Mr. Lopez, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Minton, was that you?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is public comment. This is the time when anyone in the audience wishing to speak to the board about an item that's either up for public meeting tonight or some item that's not on the agenda. This is the time for you to speak to the board. The only written request I have is for the items that are up for public hearing later. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the board at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. The next item is deviation request for Lot 58 Franklin Street. Is the applicant here? Will you come up to the podium, please? State your name and address for the record.
Vilca Cekani, and the address is like the Franklin address, 58 Franklin Street, Oviedo, Florida, 32765.
Okay, so if you can tell us about your project and why you want us to approve it.
Because that's what I need. I need the I'm going to put manufactured home, and it's wide 68 feet. So I have 78.9. So that's why.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
Are there any questions of the applicant? You can sit down. Thank you. May we hear from staff?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Dagmary Segarra, planner. This is a request for the LPA to approve the deviation as follows. A 3-foot, 37.5 deviation to the required 8-foot minimum side setback requirement for lots within the R1 zoning on the City of Oviedo Land Development Code, Section 4.12, Table 4.2, Table Lot Use of Regulations to allow the placement of a single-family dwelling to be no closer than 5 feet from the east and west property line. The second deviation is a 1.10-foot, 1.37% deviation to the required 80-foot width requirement for lots within the R1 zoning on the City of Oviedo Land Development Code, Section 4.12, Table Lot Use Regulations, to allow a lot width of 78.90 feet along Franklin Street. The subject property is located at the south side of Franklin Street, about 570 feet from Lake Jessup, consisting of approximately 0.56 acres. The property has a future land use designation of office and with a residential R1 zoning district. The minimum side setback and minimum lot width for the required subject property is regulated by Section 4.12, which requires R1 zoning districts to be side setbacks of 8 feet and a minimum lot width of 80 feet. Under the existing lot configuration, the property is non-conforming with regards to the lot width. The required lot width is 80 feet, and the existing lot width is 78.90 along Franklin Street. The applicant wishes to place a one-story, 2,022 square foot, one-family dwelling unit on the subject property, and the proposed dwelling unit will be located 5 feet from the east and west property line, encroaching 3 feet into the required 8-foot side setback. The applicant has submitted an application for the requested deviation and has addressed all the criteria of approval required by the Land Development Code. It is recommended that the LPA approve the stated deviations with the following condition: that the applicant shall install a 6-foot-high privacy fence around the property boundaries to mitigate for the encroachment into the setback. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff?
I do have one.
Mr. Minton?
The fact that the future land use is office while the current is residential, is that possibly going to create an issue with a different setback requirement on the sides? That if we approve the deviation could cause a problem later on if they decide to change to the future land use?
No, because of the setback is regulated by the zoning, and if ever the zoning changes to an office has a different requirement setbacks for the for that land use designation.
The second question is the side deviation. Is that, are we just doing for the dwelling structure itself, or do we have a possible consideration for any additional units that could be attached to the side, like an air conditioning unit or something like that, that could further encroach into the deviation?
No, we verified with the applicant, and she's going to install the air conditioning units on the back,
On the back.
so she doesn't need any further deviations other than the ones for the structure that she's requiring, that she's proposing.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a quick question.
Mr. Lopez?
In some of our other recommendations, when we do fencing, we usually put a privacy fence in, and there's no clarification in this area.
It would be a privacy
It's not
fence.
stated, though.
Oh, okay.
I'm bringing it to your attention. Whether it's going to be a wooden privacy or a PVC vinyl fencing.
It will be a wood privacy fence.
Are there any other questions? I have one. You said that she's going to put the fence around the boundary. Are you talking about the entire lot or just around the?
The entire lot, according to the land development code.
Okay. Okay. This is a public meeting item, so we won't have a public hearing on it. What's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Lopez?
I make a motion to accept the request for the deviation for this property, with the exceptions that the staff is provided with.
I'm sorry, is that a motion to approve?
Yes, a motion to approve, I'm sorry.
Okay. Do we have a second?
A second.
Mr. Young? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck with your project. Next item on the agenda is deviation request for 6065 Lake Charm Circle. Do we have the applicant? And state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Chris Wilson. My address is 6065 Lake Charm Circle.
Can you tell us about your project and why you want us to approve it?
Yes. So we live on Lake Charm Circle. We'll be backed up to an orange grove, which have been historically an orange grove for the past 50 years, and have provided a visual and security buffer and noise buffer to our home. Unfortunately, over the past 5 years or so, citrus greening has killed the grove. And so we no longer have that visual noise security buffer. And so we'd like to, so we have a unique property as we back up on 426, but it's the back of our house that points out to 426, so we're kind of wide open. So we'd like to put up a 6-foot fence to provide that visual and noise and security buffer off of 426. And so we're asking for a deviation to go from a 4-foot fence to a 6-foot fence along the right-of-way to 426. And we support staff's recommendation for the report. Of course, we submitted everything along with that as well, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Okay. Are there any questions of the applicant? Thank you.
Thank you.
May we hear from staff?
Yes, this is a request for approving the following deviation: a 2-foot-high, 50% deviation to the required 4-foot fence height requirement of Section 4.15 accessory structure of the City of Oviedo Land Development Code to allow the construction of a 6-foot-high vinyl fence 2 feet from the property line along State Road 426. The subject property is located on the south side of Lake Charm Circle, north of 426, containing approximately 1.976 acres. The property has a future land designation of LDR and a residential R1A zoning district. The applicant wishes to construct a 6-foot-high vinyl privacy fence 2 feet from the south property line abutting State Road 426 for security purposes. The applicant has submitted an application for the requested deviation and addressed the criteria of approval by the Land Development Code. It is recommended that the LPA approve the stated deviation with the condition that the applicant provide landscaping at the entrance gate of State Road 426. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of staff? What's included in this landscaping?
The applicant has stated that he already planted some trees and shrubberies, so we are requesting him to use that same landscape that he proposed it, but he can give you more details.
Yeah, there isn't anything planted yet. We're going to plant, and so I offered 2 crepe myrtles and some kind of low shrubs that'll fit in that area. On the outside
Is there
of the
some reason why it's not specified other than just, quote, landscaping?
I offered specifically crepe myrtles and low shrubs that fit in the area, and the staff report just said landscaping.
Okay, my question is to staff as to why it's...
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we can add it as part of the condition, to be specific to the 2 crepe myrtles and the shrubs.
I think it does need to be more specific because using just the word landscaping could encompass a lot. Are there any other questions? Okay, this item is not a public hearing item either, so what's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the deviation request with the condition as stated by yourself, adding in the specifics of the landscaping with the crepe myrtles and the shrubbery.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Lopez, thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good luck with your project. Okay, next item is Resolution 3431-17, the Site Development Order, and 47817, Amendment to the Preliminary Subdivision Plan for Emporia Hammock Subdivision. Do we have the applicant? Can you state your name and address for the record?
Brian Dalrymple, 2600 Lake Lucian Drive, Suite 350, Maitland, Florida, 32741.
Okay, can you tell us about your project?
Yes, ma'am. There's 2 variances requested in this application. The one variance is for a 1-foot deviation to the rear yard setback from 25 feet to 24 feet. The second request is for a 10-foot variance on the northern border of the Emporia Hammock project. There's a single woman that lives on the north side of us. That's county property. We're in the city. And she has been a vocal opponent of the project from the beginning. When we got all of our development permits and developed the project, it turns out that the Water Management District requested us to be about 4 feet to 6 feet, depending on where you are from east to west, higher than her property. So now that this site's been filled per the permits and the homes are starting, it's gotten her upset again. And we have been in contact with her over 2+ years. And she's also, I believe she's contacted the city. She's been very much in contact with the Seminole County Commissioners. And so I don't have them this week because we didn't have the agenda number, item number. to tell them to write a letter, but there will be some letters coming from them for support. But on our side, it represents as a 6-foot fence, right? We're 4 feet higher, so you set the fence down on the property line, which is that grade. We'll see 6 foot, she'll see 10 foot. We're also planting trees on her property that will also buffer the sheer whiteness of a 10-foot vinyl fence. Again, these come from meetings of myself and Mr. Vernon Priest, who's our project manager, who's here tonight, and these are her requests. So we're accommodating her request because we understand why she's asking for it. And staff has approved, they're recommended for approval, these variances, and we appreciate that and hope we can get your support as well.
Thank you. Are there questions of the applicant? Thank you. May we hear from staff?
This is a request to consider to make a recommendation for Resolution 3431-17, an amendment to approve a preliminary subdivision plan for Emporia, Hammock, approved by City Council on January 20, 2015 by Resolution number 2949-15. The site development order number is 478-17, replaces site development order 438-15. The subject single-family residence subdivision is located on the north side of Panther Street and east side of Lake Charm Drive, and the applicant and owner is Taylor Morrison. It has official land designation of LDR and a residential R1 zoning district. As previously mentioned, this site development order was approved by City Council on January 20, 2015 for the Emporia preliminary subdivision plan, and the PSP allowed for the construction of 52 single-family residential lots. But in the final engineer plans, which were approved in November 25th of 2015, it changed to 46 single-family lots. The reduction in numbers of lots was due to the mitigation requirements by St. John's River Water Management District related to the impacted wetlands. On August 1st, 2016, the City Council adopted Resolution 3251-16, approving the retreat at Lake Charm Plat, formerly known as Emporia Hammock, with a total of 46 single-family lots consistent with the final engineering plan. On March of this year, the applicant submitted the amendment to approve for the Emporia PSP. The applicant is requesting that the subdivision plan be amended to allow a 4-foot deviation to the maximum fence height of 6 feet along the rear of lots 23 through 30, to allow the placement of a 10-foot high fence and a 1-foot rear setback deviation to the required 25 feet rear for lots 32 through 46, to allow buildings to be placed 24 feet from the rear property. Due to the 3 or 4 feet grading difference between the subdivision and the property of the north property owner requested the higher fence to achieve security. The increase in size of the home design for the proposed single-family homes on those lots 32 through 46 will encroach into the required 25-foot rear setback. So the requested deviations are added to the amended set development order as deviations 1 and 2, and they read as follow. A 1-foot deviation to the required 25-foot rear setback requiring R1 zoning district on lots 32 through 46 to allow those lots to have a minimum rear setback of 24 feet, a 4% deviation. Deviation number 2, a 4-foot deviation to the 6-foot maximum fence height to allow a 10-foot high fence along the rear lots 23 through 30, 66% deviation. The proposed amendment development complies with the policies of the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan, and the proposed amendment is scheduled for City Council consideration on June 19, 2017. It is recommended that the LPA recommend adoption Resolution 3431-17. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Further questions of staff?
Madam Chair, I do have a question.
Mr. Minton?
It's mentioned twice in here, and the applicant mentioned as well, that the adjacent property owner made the request for the additional screening. Do we have that request in writing? Does the city have that request?
The neighbor requested the developer as a good neighbor, but there was never a written request to the city from the neighbor.
But this is sufficient for us to use that as a basis for the justification, that if it only went through the developer and not through the city itself? I'm just trying to get clarity on.
Well, the owner made the request, but it's because the fence is going to be on the developer side. It's the developer who will be making the official request. It is they're doing it as a being a good neighbor to the north property owner, but as far as to use it as a justification, we can say that it is.
I'm sorry, state your name again for the record.
Brian Dalrymple. Her name is Linda Smart, Mrs. Linda Smart. She will be here Monday night. She could not be here tonight. She takes care of her elderly father, pretty good distance away. She'll be here next Monday night to support the application.
Now, my question was really more a procedural question. I mean, could we use that as accept that as a justification with it not being in writing to the city? So,
I believe
we
so.
can.
We can, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Lopez, did you have
Just to
something?
clarify, if I remember correctly, the deviation is because the fence is 10 foot high, not the standard 8 foot. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that.
I have a question for the applicant. Can you come back up, sir? Can you tell me why you need the deviation for lots 32 through 46?
Yes, ma'am, because we have a series of houses that are 4 inches. There's a 4-inch difference, and so these are the houses that are in Southern Oaks, a project we have that straddles Winter Springs and Oviedo. These are the houses that the people are wanting to buy, and so rather than do a one-off deviation for each lot, when we asked about the 10-foot fence was the same time we were asking about can we get staff to approve the deviation for all the lots so the salespeople could represent that the person could have model A or B or C. And at that time, the city said, why don't we put all this together, you guys go before the council and do it in one shot. But it's really because we have a series of peculiar houses that instead of being, 60 feet deep are 60 feet and 4 inches. And so it doesn't fit between the two setbacks in those particular lots. We had a wetland issue on that eastern border, and we were not allowed to encroach that wetland any further than we did.
So you're just wanting to put larger houses than the lots were designed for?
That's correct. I guess you could say it that way. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a follow-up question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you stay?
Yes, ma'am.
up,
Yes, sir.
please? Mr. Young?
With regards to those lots and the larger homes, are all the units you're considering that dimension, or is that just the max dimension that could potentially go on those?
That is the maximum dimension. That's a great question. We don't build houses, the same house side by side, and so it might be every third house. But again, these are popular plans in this particular submarket, and so they won't all be using up that extra.
But the
space.
ARB and associated with the HOA docs, they would dictate, like you said, every third house would be a different model spec. So
Yeah.
in all actuality, a third of them would encroach into that setback, and the others would be within the.
If no buyers came in and wanted those particular models, and you have to go to Southern Oaks to actually see that particular model, it's not the one we modeled at Lake Charm. if no one chose those models, then we wouldn't actually get into that additional setback at all. It's just when the salesperson is representing these homes and the person, after a few visits, sometimes they're saying, okay, we want that house. We want to mitigate the response of the salesperson saying, well, before we agree to sell you that house, we need to go to the city to see if we can get a variance. And so often that delay, if you will, interferes with the momentum of the sale, for lack of a better description, and that's why we're asking for it on the grouping of lots.
And just to reconfirm, your HOA is not going to allow for these units the same unit to be built side by side?
They do not, and I'm sorry, I don't know the exact language, but I believe it's every third house can be a repeat of the same elevation.
And just for our benefit, do you know how many models out of your lineup will need to encroach into the setback?
There are 4 of what we offer that would encroach, 4 out of 8.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions?
Madam Chair, I just want to clarify the height deviation, as Mr. Lopez asked. The requirement of the code is 6 foot high, so they want to build it at 10 foot high, so it's a 4 foot deviation, not the requirement of 8. So
Thank you. This is not a public hearing item either. What's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Lopez?
make a motion to approve resolution, what number is this?
To recommend approval?
Yes, I do. I got it here. Hold on. Maybe. Resolution 3431-17, as stated by staff.
Okay. Do we have a second?
A second.
Mr. Young? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote, and this is for both deviations. Yeah, both deviations at the same time. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. 1. Motion carries. The City Council will consider this item on June 19th at 6:30 in these chambers. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Resolution 3433-17, the Non-Statutory Development Agreement and associated Master Land Use Plan and Architectural Design Order for Chick-Fil-A and retail development. Do we have an applicant? Okay, come on up to the podium. State your name and address for the record.
Okay, it's Brian Cassidy, 713 Neptune Lane, Neptune Beach, Florida, 32266.
Okay, and can you tell us about your project and why you want us to approve it?
Yes, ma'am. It's located at the intersection of East Mitchell Hammock Road and State Road 434, Alphi Trail. It's a Chick-Fil-A. The property's comprised of 2 lots. That'd be the lot would be adjusted so that Chick-fil-A could go on the corner parcel and a retail building on the other parcel. They'll have cross-access between them and also between the neighboring lots, or at least the ability to connect in the future. And it's, it's a typical Chick-fil-A. The site plan has been kind of laid out in collaboration with the city, with the orientation of the building and whatnot, and the drive-through and the internal stacking of the drive-through to kind of maximize that. And I'm the civil engineer of record for the project. applicant is similar, and they're also here, but I'm here to answer any questions, and hopefully you'll approve the project.
Thank you. Are there questions of the applicant? Thank you for right now.
Okay.
May we hear from staff?
This is a request for the LPA to consider and make recommendation of Resolution 3433-17, Non-Statutory Development Agreement and Associated Master Land Use Plan and Architectural Design Order for the Chick-Fil-A and retail development. The subject property consists of approximately 2.52 acres and is located at southeast corner of the East Mitchell Hammock Road and Alafaya Trail. The applicant is Sembler Company and the engineer consultant is CPH. The property designation is CM and the future land use map, and it's commercial C2 on the zoning map. The NSDA includes development standards for the proposed development depicted in the attached MLUP. Staff verified that the MLUP property reflects the standards of the Land Development Code and provided within the NSDA. The city attorney has reviewed the NSDA and provided comments that were addressed by the applicant. The applicant has also addressed the transportation and environmental consultants' comments related to the project. The project consists of the reconfiguration and development of two lots. Lot 1 will be reconfigured in size to 1.61 acres, and Lot 2 will be reconfigured in size to 0.93 acres. Lot 1 will be developed with a 4,989 square foot drive-through restaurant. Lot 2 will be developed with a 6,064 square foot retail building. The infrastructure necessary for the service for both buildings will be constructed in place and will be operational prior to the construction of the buildings. The NSDA and LUP included the following criteria were negotiated within the NSDA. The building setback for Lot 1 building along Alafaya Trail will be 19.43. Signage will be according to the Land Development Code. Landscape and buffering will along Lot 1 on 434 will consist of 7 medium street trees instead of large trees. Lot 2 east buffer will consist of 5 palms instead of the required small medium trees, and no large trees be provided. Additionally, there is a encroaching into the landscape buffer into the retention ponds 1, 2, 3, and 4 as depicted in the Master Land Use Plan. The applicant will pay the amount of $5,950 into the tree bank related to buffer trees, replacement trees, and street trees. The access into the property and driveways will be as depicted as in the Master Land Use Plan. The primary access point will have a right-in and right-out on Alafaya Trail and a right-in and right-out of Mitchell Hammock, and the developer will also construct a eastbound right turn only lane on East Mitchell Hammock Road. The parking will be as proposed as shown on the Master Land Use Plan, and stormwater as it will be shared within the two lots and the parcel to the south, and there will be language that the developer would to modify the drainage to accommodate the project and all of the lot on the south. Loading, there will be one loading zone for both lots. Lighting will be provided along the right-of-way for Mitchell Hammock. For tree preservation, the applicant provided comprehensive planning mobility strategies as follows. They preserve a 45-inch diameter tree located on the southwest corner of the subject property. They're providing charging stations, a total of 3 charging stations feeding 6 parking spaces. that will be incorporated to the development, and they will provide LED lighting on site, impervious pavement as an environmental friendly practice. The developer shall pay water and capital recovery impact fees prior to building permit issuance. It is a staff recommendation at this moment. The language for the architecture that is proposed on the non-statutory development agreement to be removed from the NSDA, since that item will be addressed on a architectural development order that will be presented to the City Council on June 19. So the language of the architectural is not necessary in the development agreement. So it's staff recommendation with the approval of this site, with this site plan, of this non-statutory development agreement, to remove that specific language. It is recommended that the LPA recommended adoption of Resolution 3433-17, non-statutory development agreement with associated master land use plan and architectural design order for Chick-Fil-a and retail development, with the recommendation from staff. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff? Nothing?
I got one. Got a quick one.
Mr. Lopez?
Going back to the comprehensive plan mobility strategies, charging stations, there's 3. How do we come up with the number of 3?
Recently, we adopted Article 8 on the Land Development Code, which provides a number of required charging stations per development. If you have 50 parking spaces, you're required to have 1. So the applicant provided 2 additional ones from what is required by the Article 8.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Young?
when working with the engineer and applicant on the design, did you entertain any other orientations that would perhaps relieve the driveway exit almost directly onto the entrance and exit from Alafaya 434, as it appears here?
No, the project has always been presented with the existing driveway that is being proposed
And the driveway exit directly
into,
drive-through?
into the drive-through. I know that if the applicant can come forward, I know that they are being communications with FDOT to make slight changes into the site to make that entrance a little bit more accessible.
You state your name again for the record.
Brian Cassidy.
Thank you.
That's correct. Yeah, we're still working with the DOT on that access over there. It's in review with them, and exactly how it's going to be configured is still a little bit up in the air. We're trying to address their comments, but their road, so they'll have the final say-so on how it's laid out there.
Sure, and I appreciate that. My question was maybe more related to the internal circulation, and I appreciate a lot of the thought that went into the layout, but it just, and Chick-Fil-A knows their product better than anyone, but with how busy they get at lunchtime and the traffic this site's going to generate, especially pulling in and out of 434 Alafaya there, it seems like you're going to just be running into a dead-end situation from circulation through the drive-through.
I understand, yeah, and that's, Chick-fil-A, I believe they are willing, and this is something, we're trying to work out with the DOT, but, they will actually, in peak times, I think they'll have an employee there at the drive-through, we may have to put some signage there, to not block the intersection, but I think, they are willing, possibly, to have someone there to, try to help make sure that people aren't blocking the intersection, and so they continue to free flow, in and out of the drive-through. Right. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is not to block the drive-through so people can't, be blocked from exiting there. So, I don't want to say, to be directing traffic, but you may have seen them, how they come out in the drive-throughs during peak times and take people's orders. But they're willing, I believe, to have someone out there to assist customers, there. Again, we're still working on that access there with the DOT, so right now, it's not permitted. We're right in the middle of the review with them, and so that's the way it's shown there is how Chick-fil-A would like it to be done if possible.
Mr. Lopez?
How many drive-throughs is that? One or two?
It's one exit, but it's a dual drive-through where they order.
So the congestion's really going to be up there.
Yeah, so you'll have two drive-through lanes where people can pull in and order, and then they'll merge back into one lane. We tried to maximize the stacking of the cars on site, and keep that on the property as opposed to pushing it out onto one of the roads, or the main driveway.
So the drive-through is going to be on the north side of the property, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then they're going to go through, and then they're going to go right and then back out the exit. Is that the way I'm looking at this?
I take that back. If the drive-through actually kind of wraps around the north and I believe it'd be the west side of the building.
Okay.
Yeah, so it actually, I would say it's more around the north and the west side.
Yeah, I see. No,
Yeah.
Mr.
So,
Burton?
kind of related to the same question with the exit onto Central, and I don't know if it's him or the staff that can answer this, but this entrance is depicted in the map. That's the existing entrance that's there now. Is that correct?
No, that entrance has been moved a little bit further now, north,
Further north.
further north.
It's not possible to go further south that could have possibly alleviate that back to like either where it is currently or on the southern boundary of that property? To go back to Mr. Young's point of maybe some separation from the exit to the drive-through to the exit to the roadway. Because, it looks like based on this picture, we've got some buffer there that's been, where we might be able to.
Sir, did you want to add something?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is J.P. Gazzardo with a similar company, 5858 Central Avenue, St. Petersburg, Florida. The access that's in question actually was originally slated to be further south of this site, but there's a tree that the city had requested that we preserve that's directly south of that, so that has required us to actually kind of move that access point slightly to the north where it's what was originally planned. So that's the reason why we've moved that access for the preservation of that oak tree that is right there between us and what is the pet store.
Is the access going to be the same size as what's there now, or is it going to be larger to accommodate more lanes coming in and out?
To be larger than what is there now.
Like a north to south kind of larger is what I mean. Is like the distance from basically edge to edge of that entrance as it exists now.
Like the width of it.
The width of the access drive?
The existing driveway is the old flared style driveways, that as opposed to a curved radius, it's just an angular flare driveway, and I believe that one is a little bit wider than the one that we're proposing. Okay. It's hard to see. It's actually shown in the plans, but it's a shaded back line that's in the underline, darker line, so it's kind of tough to see, but it is there. The best place to see is on the survey, the existing access, that is.
And it also looks like then right adjacent to that, the access that goes from that lot into the lot that's to the south is going to stay? That little pass-through there?
Yes, sir.
And then same thing on the north side, on the Mitchell Hammock side, that access coming in between the two parking lots, essentially, that looks like it's a little bit further east than what exists now?
to give more spacing, correct. There's an access point that is further to the east, and there's also an additional access point that is to the west. So we're eliminating 2 access points and going down to 1.
Kind of in between.
In between,
Where we are
correct.
now. And then you're proposed to add a right turn lane off of the property part, so that it'll be, not in addition to what already exists on Mitchell Hammock, there'll be an access right turn lane to get in there.
Correct.
Okay. This question is probably for staff. The number of parking spaces, is it at the minimum that's required by the land development code, or is it
They are exceeding the minimum code, with the exception of the number of compact spaces. They have more than what the land development code allows.
how many more?
They are proposing, sorry, compact spaces. They have the code would have allowed only 5 compact spaces, and they are providing them, with the exception of 8, all of them to be compact.
Thank you.
Why are there so many compact spaces? Why has the city why has staff agreed to so many compact?
Well, the proposal by the developer is, it was more of a design, so they could make the design work. But maybe the applicant can indicate why.
And I believe the most, when you said with the exception of 8 stalls, those are mostly all on the retail lot, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So they're mostly almost all the compact stalls are on the retail side, and I guess it's just the need to have the maximum parking they can get to support that building.
So you don't expect any of the customers for the retail are going to have anything larger than a compact car?
Well, actually, in a lot of places, the compact stall is a standard size stall in other municipalities. Your standard stall is a little bit bigger than, a lot of places that I've seen a standard stall. So the compact stall is a normal size stall in a lot of places.
Okay, but here it's labeled as compact.
Yes, ma'am. I understand.
How wide are those compact spots that you have on the plans?
I believe they're 9.5 feet. Is that correct? Is it 9?
9 by 18, 9 by 16 on these.
And staff, can you tell us what the code allows for compact and standard?
The standard for parking is 20 by 10, and compact is 18 by 9.
And how many compact places are on your plan, sir?
It's 24.
24. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you need that many spaces to have the required number of spaces required?
Don't believe so. I believe it was more of trying to get as many stalls as we could for that building. I'm not sure about that, though. I don't remember the calculation off of the top of my head. I think it does show on the site plan how many is required. I just don't recall the number off of the top of my head.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were the engineer of record.
I am, but I just don't remember how many parking stalls are on there. I can take a quick look at the plan if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can you come back to the microphone?
Yeah, there's 30 stalls required, and we've got 37.
So you could take out a couple of those and widen those to standard size spots.
Definitely possible, yeah.
That would appear to be more appropriate than having this many compact spaces. Is that something you would agree to do?
I think that would be JP's call, but I believe that's what it takes to
You come back to the microphone, please.
Yes, ma'am. The parking calculation for this project, the way we understood it by staff, was both a master parking plan. So for that, both standard parks and compact parks were calculated for the entire project as a whole, as both two. And I'm sorry.
No. Okay.
So the question, as it relates to the level of flexibility that we have, we were obviously trying to maximize the parking so we get the parking requirement that was done and succeed that from a spacing standpoint that staff has asked us to do. Is there a possibility for us to modify that in such a way that that would eliminate some of those parking spots to make them wider? We can play with that plan to make that happen if that's a condition or absolute requirement.
That's something you would agree to do?
We would, yes, we would endeavor to achieve that. I don't know if we would be able to do all of them, but we could hope to work some of those out.
Okay. Mr. Lopez, did you have a question?
Just a quick question. The parking lots are adjoined, correct? So
Yes.
the parking lots, the spaces that are on the Chick-Fil-A side are standard sizes, correct?
Correct.
So there's
Yes.
nothing to prevent someone from parking over there and walking over.
Absolutely not, no, and that's
It's
part of
really
it.
considered all one property, even if it's two parcels, correct?
Absolutely, yes, correct, sir.
So it kind of mutes, not really, but I mean, I see where you were going with this, so
Yeah.
to speak.
Yeah.
We've also provided a sidewalk between the two
I
properties.
saw that.
So that it's easy for pedestrians to get from one to the other.
The sidewalk across the entrance?
There's one that goes from the Chick-fil-A building all the way through the parking lot and connects to the retail building. That was the one I was referring to.
Yeah, it goes across the traffic lanes going out to Mitchell Hammock.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, one of the things that I guess has been historic for Chick-fil-A is the backup in the drive-up during rush hour times. And I would echo the concerns of the traffic backing up out onto Mitchell Hammock or out onto 434. And I know that other Chick-fil-A's, you've had an extra one or two employees out there taking orders. What do you do when the traffic is backed up out onto the road? How do you address that issue?
So, yes, ma'am. The first thing is we've added the appropriate turn lane as requested as you come into the site. In addition, if you are coming eastbound and you enter the south from the northern boundary and you come through the access drive, you actually have to make a loop to get back. So you've got double stacking as it wraps around the northern boundary, which would be buffered with the hardscaping requirements that staff has requested us to do. In addition to that, you would see that same double stacking as it goes southbound through the parking lot, if I could show you on a site plan, but as it goes further south, so you've got double lanes that could basically go all the way down there. So you're talking about a substantial amount of backup that would need to take place, and then it would have to loop back northbound to get even to the entrance on Mitchell Hammock. So that's, I don't know the exact count, but I bet you're close to, in the 80s to 90 range of cars that it would take to back up all the way to that place.
So from, say, the pickup window, if you loop back around the way you're talking about, back out to Mitchell Hammock, you think that you can stack 80 to 90?
We have a stacking plan that has been presented. If you're asking the exact question, I can get that answer for you. You're asking from the window through the double drive-through, southbound through the parking lot, and then wrapping back around up to Mitchell Hammock, the number of cars that would be required to stack there. I can give you that answer. I don't have that off the top of my head. We've not calculated that exact
Is
number.
that on the plans?
That
you
is
have?
not on the plans. We provide a stacking plan that kind of loops around, which shows, I think, up to 40 cars, but I can give you a complete plan that shows the northern bound double stack all the way down the parking lot, back around north on the access drive up to Mitchell Hammock.
Okay, and also a stacking from 434 turning in?
Yes, but keep in mind that you have double stacks on the northern boundary and then coming through that entire parking lot as you come there, which is a lot of parking, a lot of stacking, a significant amount.
Thank you. Are there other questions?
I just want to
Mr.
follow up.
Lopez?
Yeah. So if they come in from the Mitchell Hammock side, they got to come all the way back around the sidewalk and then back in. Is that what you're saying?
It's hard to put it.
Yeah, I know. Can we get it up on the, is there any way we can get it up on the monitor, please?
Do we have the stacking plan for at least the double drive-through on the north side or the south? Do you have any of that available right now on there? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I have a good idea. Right, that's
We need
fine.
to pick it up.
Okay, yes, not a problem. So we're looking at the plan as you come through. So if this is Mitchell Hammock, someone is coming, that would be eastbound into the turn lane that we'll be constructing. You're going all the way down the throat of this access drive, and then you're making the turn coming through the parking lot in here. And so you're not even getting to the drive-through until you go through the parking lot, get to the drive-through, splits into the double lane before you get to the drive-throughs, and then ultimately to the pickup window. So from here, we can give you this distance probably. We could calculate that for you relatively quickly and kind of back into what that count is if you would like us to do that. But you're talking about someone that would travel eastbound, come through the access drive, south, through the parking lot, and then double stacking all the way through here.
For someone coming from 434 turning in here?
Yeah, if they're coming through here, they come, if that's eastbound again, they come through this access drive all to the parking lot, and then they turn through the parking lot again before they get to the drive-through that's up there.
Okay.
So it really constitutes quite a bit of traffic.
A significant amount of
Cars.
stacks.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This was my concern right here.
Right.
On the same page as when you're exiting during peak hour, I've got a bunch of people pouring in off 434. I've also got people exiting, and I'm stacked up because I'm exiting into a right turn lane that's got a red light up here.
Yeah.
And this person's trying to get over to the left turn, which inevitably they will. This is going to give you this much stacking from the exit window.
Correct. Well, from the exit window here. So they go through the balance of it. They wait here until there is a break. I understand there's backup here, and that's why we're trying to address this. But all of this was done to try to accommodate the preservation of the trees.
And so-
Not that I want to kill a tree, but if the tree wasn't there, would that help you?
We would be able to, our original plan had this further to the south. But our desire is to go with the plan as presented today. We've worked with staff for close to a year on the plan, and it was presented technically before the overlay, correct me if I'm wrong. And we've all this design is to try to adhere to the newest standard that's been out there. So
Any other questions? Thank you.
We're going to have a signal here.
You're going to put a traffic light there?
Yeah. So that may help give the, this is already in design. It's with Lake Chapter. They're going together.
They're going together. Because that was going to be my only
With the
other
access.
discussion for staff, would just, if knowing that now that changes things,
Yeah, it
because that'll
does.
help alleviate the traffic flow, but otherwise I was going to ask staff to look at if there's a possibility to remove this right exit, keep this an entrance only. You already have the cross exit access down here, you have exits up here, and you have future over here.
But then you would also be cross.
Yeah, all it's going to do is it's going to help traffic flow because this guy's forced to go this way, this guy's coming in this way. There's no stack up, hold out to get out onto 434 right there with this. So, that's fine.
Thank you. I do want to say I appreciate the fact that you're working around the tree. We have lots of developers that come in and mow down every tree in sight, so we do appreciate that you've gone to so much effort to try and save that one.
Yeah, we did. We shifted the whole site to the north to try to save it. It's a big 45-inch oak tree, so it's a nice tree.
We appreciate your effort in that regard.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Sheridan.
Real quick on that, and I'm sure it's clerical or something. On the tree plan, that tree is actually crossed off. In the chart, it says it's remaining, but there is actually an X through that tree.
Is that right? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we noticed, but we're in agreement that that was a mistake, yeah.
We're talking about that tree, so I just
Yeah.
want to make sure we're all on the same page.
So that will get corrected so nobody cuts it down,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
Thank you.
So it's 25.
Appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you.
Okay, this is not a public hearing item either. What's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair, before you go, I just want to clarify about the compact spaces.
Okay.
We were doing the calculations, and we do the calculation, the 25% of the total provided. So if we base it on the total provided, the applicant would be allowed to have a total of 25 compact spaces.
And
they're
they have
providing
37?
No, they have 29.
29.
29. So it's only 4 compact spaces more than what the code would have allowed it at the overall site. And they can share.
In looking at both together.
Looking at both lots.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions of staff? Okay, what's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Lopez?
make a motion to approve Resolution 343317 as stated by staff.
Is it to recommend approval?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Sheridan, thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The City Council will consider this item, is that June 19th as well?
Yes.
June 19th at 6:30 in these chambers.
Oh, Madam Chair, I forgot, you need to make that, the recommendation with the staff recommendation of removing the language, the architectural language out of the development agreement.
You're right. I'm sorry. We kind of went past that. I assumed that that's what you meant. I guess we need to vote on that again so that that's clear. Before we do that procedurally, can we ask the city attorney, do we need to do a motion to reconsider that? What do we need to do technically at this point?
Motion to rescind the...
To rescind the one we did and then redo it? Do a new one?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So do we have a motion to rescind the
By the
recommendation?
Well, you all voted yes, so yeah,
Okay.
so it doesn't matter who made it.
I make a motion to rescind the previous Resolution 3433-17.
And I will second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of rescinding our last action? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so now do we have a motion regarding Resolution 3433-17?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 3433-17 with the changes to the
To remove the architectural language?
To remove the architectural language that's in the current writing.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Young, thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item, I tell you what, before we go to the next item, let's take about a 5-minute recess.
It's funny how things happen from city to city, and they're timely. Like today, I had to do research on motions to rescind.
I have like an hour on my battery, so that's why I was. I know there's so much less small. I don't know if I should have second movie. Yeah, I looked at it. This is what it's really trying to warm up.
Well, that's not my game, but I was told that it all was, next time I come on, play that.
We'll call the meeting back to order. Okay, the next item on the agenda is ordinance number 1648, amendments to the city's 2025 comp plan future land use element. We will hear from staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If it's okay with the board, I'd like to do the presentation for all three applications at the same time since they're all related, if that's okay with the board.
Sure.
Okay. So the first item is Ordinance 1648, and this is a request for the local planning agency to recommend to the City Council transmittal to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity an amendment to the city's 2025 Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Element. Per Section 163.3174.4A Florida statutes, the local planning agency is responsible for the preparation of the comprehensive plan and planned amendments and shall make recommendation to the City Council regarding adoption or amendment of said plan. The subject text amendment qualifies as a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment. Per Chapter 163 Florida statutes, a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment requires one public hearing before the local planning agency and two public hearings before the City Council. The applicant proposes one text amendment and staff proposes two text amendments to the future land use element. The first staff-initiated text amendment proposes to amend future land use element policy 1-1.1.10 to remove the requirement that commercial and office development shall locate at major arterial and collector intersections, and require instead that commercial and office development to be located and oriented to arterial and collector roadways. The proposed amendment to the future land use element policy 1-1.1.10 is provided in your staff report. There are commercial and office developments that are located at major arterial and collector intersections. However, there are commercial and office developments that are not located at major intersections but are located on arterial and collector roadways. The amendment to future land use element policy 1-1.1.10 reflects the existing office and commercial development pattern within the city. The applicant-initiated text amendment creates a new future land use designation within the city's comprehensive plan future land use element. The proposed future land use designation is high-intensity commercial. The proposed high-intensity commercial future land use designation provides for a more intense land use designation, which is at 1 floor area ratio, an intensity bonus of 0.50 floor area ratio, than that of the commercial future land use designation, which the maximum is 0.50, and an intensity bonus of 0.10.
The existing commercial future land use designation caps the intensity of non-residential buildings to a maximum of 0.5 floor area ratio or up to 0.60 floor area ratio with the bonus, meeting certain criteria. Compared to the non-residential future land use designations within the city's comprehensive plan, the proposed high-intensity commercial would be the most intensive land use allowed with an intensity bonus. However, there are restrictions to achieving the intensity bonus. An intensity bonus will be granted for projects that include one or more of the following: a regional commercial or business centers, development of a structured parking garage, a financial contribution per policy 2-2.4.5, or reduction of a project's daily trip rate as compared to the maximum daily trip rate based on the latest ITE manual generated by commercial shopping centers, which for every 10% reduction in daily trip rate generated by the specific use of the project shall receive a 10% increase in the allowable floor area ratio for a maximum increase of 0.50. The proposed HICM future land use designation allows for mixed-use multifamily dwelling units up to 24 dwelling units per acre. The city's commercial future land use designation does allow for mixed-use development. However, it limits the number of residential density to 15 dwelling units per acre.
Deborah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're having some technical issues here on the dais.
Keep doing. I'm listening.
If perhaps staff can see what they can do to get the computer up.
You can have mine if you need it.
No, I can't. It's dead. Yeah, it won't work. It's not responding. Okay. Thank you. All right, thank you.
Open it up for public comments.
Sorry.
Okay. If ordinance number 1648 is approved, the accompanying ordinance number 1649, which is the small-scale comprehensive plan amendment, if approved, would designate the applicant's property located at 1010 Lockwood Boulevard with the HICM future land use designation. The second staff-initiated amendment is to the industrial future land use designation. It allows office use as a permissible use, and it also removes the restriction of only allowing wholesale commercial uses and broadens the type of commercial uses within the industrial future land use designation. And changes are provided in the table that's in your staff report. Staff recommends approval of ordinance number 1648. The city attorney reviewed ordinance 1648 and recommends approval. It is recommended that the LPA recommend to the City Council transmittal of ordinance number 1648 to the Department of Economic Opportunity. The second item that we have before us is ordinance number 1649, and this is a request to amend the city's future land use map to change the future land use designation of approximately 1.597 acres from commercial to high-intensity commercial. The subject property is located on the east side of Swanson Drive and approximately 92 feet west of Lockwood Boulevard. The applicant is Tara Tidrow with Lowndes, Drostick, Doster, Cantor, and Reed. Comprehensive Plan Policy 1-1.1.4 requires the city to evaluate criteria when considering a comprehensive plan amendment request, and that criteria can be found in your staff report. The subject amendment qualifies as a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment. Per Chapter 163, Florida statutes, small-scale comprehensive plan amendments require one public hearing before the planning zoning, before the LPA, and one public hearing before the City Council. The applicant requests a future land use map amendment from commercial to the proposed newly created high-intensity commercial future land use. The current zoning district for the subject property is C1. Concurrent with this future land use map amendment request, the applicant has filed an application for a zoning map amendment for the same property from commercial C1 to commercial C2. The applicant proposes to build a 3-story, 94,000 square foot self-storage commercial building on the proposed property. A self-storage building is only permissible within the C2 zoning district with the approval of a special exception use order. The special exception use order requires review and approval by the LPA and City Council. The special exception use order will be considered during the adoption public hearing of the large-scale comprehensive plan amendment. The maximum utilization allowed under the proposed future land use designation with a maximum intensity of 1.5 floor area ratio is 104,348 square feet of commercial building. An intensity bonus can be granted for the projects that include one or more of the following, which is found in the large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, which is Ordinance 1648, which the density bonus can be granted for regional, commercial, or business centers, development of a structured parking garage, a financial contribution per policy 2-2.4.5, or reduction of the project's daily trip as compared to the maximum daily trip rate based on the latest ITE manual generated by the commercial shopping center. The proposed self-storage building complies with the proposed policy by reducing the daily trip rate. It comes up to 96% compared to the maximum daily trip rate for uses within the HICM future land use designation. The proposed high-intensity commercial future land use designation is compatible with adjacent future land use designations, zoning districts, and existing uses. There is adequate capacity to accommodate the proposed use. Staff recommends approval of Ordinance number 1649. It is recommended that the LPA recommend adoption of Ordinance number 1649. And the last ordinance that we have is Ordinance 1650, and this is a request to amend the city's official zoning map to change the zoning district of the same property from commercial C1 to commercial C2. The applicant is Tara Tidro with Lowndes, Drostick, Doster, Cantor, and Reed. The purpose of the zoning map amendment is to change the existing zoning district from commercial C1 to commercial C2 zoning district consistent with the proposed high-intensity commercial future land use designation. The applicant proposes to build a 3-story, 94,000 square foot self-storage commercial building on the subject property. A self-storage building is only permissible with the approval of a special exception use order. The proposed C2 zoning district is compatible with the adjacent future land use designations, zoning districts, and existing uses. There is adequate capacity to accommodate the proposed use. Staff recommends approval of Ordinance number 1650. It is recommended that the LPA recommend adoption of Ordinance 1650. And I know I did the 3 presentations at one time, but you'll need to open up each item, public hearing, for each ordinance. That concludes staff's presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Okay.
I have one, just a quick one.
Mr. Lopez?
Deborah, you and I had a conversation a couple weeks back, and I'm just wondering, when is that going to be addressed for the commercial retail area? Is that?
I'm so glad you asked that question. The reason being is that we have addressed it in this ordinance. The first ordinance is Ordinance 1648, and you asked about commercial, retail commercial and industrial.
Correct.
So if you look at your staff report, and if you look at the section that says industrial, there's a table.
Okay.
And if you look under permissible uses, it says wholesale commercial. So you're not allowed to do retail if the comp plan, because your uses have to be consistent with your comprehensive plan. And so today it only allows wholesale, not retail. So in order for us to allow a range of uses, commercial uses within the industrial, we have to start with the future land use. And so we have amended it to remove the wholesale and allow just commercial manufacturing, commercial and manufacturing, which would allow retail.
It would.
It would allow retail. It removes the wholesale.
That's not how I'm reading it, but okay. Because it just says manufacturing, warehouse, and other, well, I guess the other industry use, I guess that would, is that?
But with us removing the language that says wholesale, it allows for commercial. In our commercial future land use, if you turn to the page before, you'll see commercial, right? The commercial district.
Yes.
And if you look at the top, it says permissible uses include commercial and office development. So commercial allows, the word commercial allows a multiple range of uses for commercial. So it allows retail and commercial. So we did the same thing for industrial. Industrial, we removed wholesale and just put commercial.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we'll open up ordinance number 1648, amendments to the city's 2025 comprehensive plan future land use element. This is a public hearing item. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to this item?
Similar to Deborah's presentation, I'm Tara.
I'm sorry, would you state your name
Sure.
just for the record?
Tara Tedrow. I'm here from Lounge Drosdick Doster Caner and Reed, 215 North Eola Drive, Orlando, Florida. Similar to Deborah's presentation, was hoping to address all three items at once, even though you'll have to vote on them separately if that's okay for convenience.
This is the time for a public hearing on the first ordinance.
Madam Chair, we started with the staff presentation and not the applicant.
And they have a request for amendment in this, don't they? Not just the staff.
Correct. There are two staff-initiated amendments and one amendment that we have initiated as the applicant.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Go ahead then and present as the applicant.
Sure. And just a quick question on the technical side. In order to change slides, is there? Perfect. Thanks so much. Like I said, I'm Tara Tedrow here on behalf of the applicant, Johnson Development, which is a retail group that also does industrial uses, self-storage uses out of South Carolina. The next slide shows an aerial view of our property. Our property is located at 1010 Lockwood. It is west of Lockwood Boulevard, east of Swanson Drive, and north of East Mitchell Hammock. The next slide will show you a view from the entrance off of Lockwood Boulevard. The property that's undeveloped next to the Double Down Gymnasium is the property in question tonight. And the next slide will show you a view of one of our adjacent neighbors. That's Double Down Athletics, and they are located north of our parcel. The next slide shows you a view of the adjacent neighbor, the Shell gas station. That's the side of their building that is directly facing, again, to the north of our parcel as well. The next slide shows you the existing retail neighbors that we have, and those are our neighbors to the south. There's a drive-through bank facility directly adjacent. And the next slide will show you the side of that drive-through bank building that faces our property. Again, that is a vacant bank building right now, but that is the retail building to the south. The next picture shows you a view towards Swanson Drive. Our property is located with the Oviedo Groves apartment directly adjacent to us, except separating our property between us and the Oviedo Groves apartments. You have a 50-foot right-of-way in addition to the setback that we have over 20 feet on our property line, plus a masonry wall down the length of Swanson Drive, an existing mature tree line on both sides of that wall, plus over 60 feet on the Oviedo Grove apartment project itself, as there are double-lane road parking there, as well as a drive aisle for that apartment project. And there is only one building with 4 units, 3 stories tall, and 4 units that would really have a line of sight of our building, if they even can, over that tree line visually. The next slide shows you a view down Swanson Drive. On the left of that picture, that will be the vacant property that my client is purchasing. And again, to the right, you can see the large mature tree line that spans the entirety of Swanson Drive, providing an existing visual buffer from our project and any development that you have on the other side of Swanson. By way of background, as Deborah stated, it's a 1.597-acre vacant parcel located off Lockwood and Swanson, currently zoned C1 with the future land use designation of commercial. The request tonight is to establish a future land use designation of high-intensity commercial, which requires a corresponding amendment to the map for our designation to be reflected on your future land use map, as well as a rezone from C1 to C2 consistent with that designation. Now, if you look at the uses that you can have by C1 and C2, they are very similar under your code. There are only a handful of uses that are not permitted by right in C1 that are permitted by right in C2. So if you go through your code, our rezoning request would only allow about 5 additional uses by right under C2. And more specifically, if you look at our adjacent properties, the existing gas station to the north as well as the existing drive-through bank building to the south, those are both C2 uses. So the use that we're proposing sandwiched between them is compatible with C2, as I believe back when this was a PD, before that was removed or before it expired, those C2 uses were permitted under the PD. So this is a compatible and transitional use between those. The next slide shows you the future land use map and how we are requesting for a commercial change to high-intensity commercial on our parcel specifically. The requested comprehensive plan amendment, if you look at a side-by-side comparison of commercial versus high-intensity commercial, the real differences come in, one, the FAR, a 0.6 with a density bonus versus a 1.5 with a density bonus. Open space calculations, only a 5% difference for our use. Commercial office mixed-use requirements, 50% of a site would have to have it for commercial, 65% would have to be under high-intensity commercial, and the dwelling units per acre, which doesn't apply here, but it would go from 15 dwelling units per acre to an allowable 24 dwelling units per acre. And there is already a comp plan designation that your comprehensive plan has that would allow an FAR up to 1. So our designation would model that 1 FAR, but it provides very limited scenarios in which you could actually get a density bonus up to a 0.5. And those limited scenarios were driven by what your comprehensive plan already puts forth as policies, goals, and objectives. So if you look at the first situation that you could have an increase in that density bonus contemplated under our new comprehensive plan designation, the first is a regional commercial or business center. That's consistent with your economic development policy 1.1.2.7, where you're trying to encourage a larger growth of economic uses within the city in certain collector and arterial roadways. The second is a structured parking garage. That's consistent with your policy 1-1.1.9, which is trying to encourage greater pedestrian and multimodal mobility throughout the city. The other density bonus comes from financial contributions. Again, that's taken directly from your existing comprehensive plan language under policy 2-2.4.5. And the final way is a decrease in traffic generation. Any jurisdiction we go into, traffic is always an issue. We understand that. So one of the things we worked with staff on was saying, in an effort to have projects that minimize the impact on your roadways, let's have a density bonus that will have those projects rewarded even if they have a higher FAR. If it's going to decrease the amount of traffic on the roadways, then that density bonus can correlate accordingly. Our project is very unique in terms of the use being proposed. Self-storage, and we'll go over some of the statistics from the traffic study we did, generates significantly less traffic than any other commercial use will anywhere in the city of Oviedo, regardless of the site that we're putting it on. So that is where we can get up to the 1.5 FAR, specifically because of that decrease in traffic generation. One of the considerations for you is whether or not this complies with your comprehensive plan. I've gone over some of the policies and goals that are already met under our contemplated high-intensity commercial future land use designation, but if you look at specific policies of your comp plan, the ones that are listed in the staff report and are up on my slides have to do with residential density considerations, the impact of your proposal on schools and population and level of service, which we have none or minimal when it comes to levels of service, the building design, the ability to have greater pedestrian-friendly corridors, a determination of compatibility with existing commercial land uses adjacent to the property. So we are meeting the greater overall policies of economic growth, mixed-use development opportunities, and I think that this land use designation is a unique opportunity for the city to provide, again, not too many different opportunities than what your commercial designation already allows, but to have a different mix of land uses potentially on sites throughout the city if they were to seek to have this future land use designation in the future. But any other property that would have to have this future land use designation would have to go through the same public hearing process to have the map amended in order for that to be approved, and that would again be a very site-specific consideration you would have to do for any future applicants. So just looking at our project specifically, the FAR considerations are what triggered the need and considerations with staff in our discussion for months is the creation consistent with the comprehensive plan of high-intensity commercial. The requested rezoning is simply to bring our site consistent with that high-intensity commercial and the allowable use that we're proposing tonight. So because you have to have a special exception use order under your code for self-storage, and it's not allowed in C1, but it is in C2, we are requesting the C2 zoning designation. Again, that is compatible with the existing development that is already commercial by nature in the corridor that we are in. But again, the direct adjacent uses from the north and on the south are C2 uses by nature, and so this is consistent and compatible with those uses as well. Here's an aerial of the site plan. It's overlaid on the existing site to show you where it fits in relation. You'll notice on this site plan there are only 7 parking spots, which is unusual for a 94,000 square foot building, but that is because of the incredibly low traffic generation that comes from our project. The next slide will show you some renderings, and I say revised renderings at the top because we've gone through multiple iterations of the architectural renderings that we have for this project. That's in part due to discussions we had with staff, but also because the new architectural design standards were adopted midway through this process for us, and so we brought our site into compliance with those and created new renderings based on that. And the second slide just shows you another view if you're coming off of Lockwood, entering our property, of where our customers would drive in onto our site. The traffic study we had completed back in April looked at a comparison. So it compared the highest possible FAR you could have square footage-wise for the site. So if we look at 104,000 square feet of retail versus 104,000 square feet of self-storage, what would be generated? And the results are similar to what we see in all the other jurisdictions that we bring self-storage. It's that proposed self-storage generates significantly lower traffic than the maximum allowable land use and commercial would allow. The next slide will show you that drastic difference. It's a 93% reduction. PM peak hour trips, that's before 4 to 6 p.m., has a 407 trips for retail and only 27 trips for self-storage. If you look at daily trips, that size commercial would generate 4,607 trips, whereas self-storage would generate throughout the entirety of the day, on average, 261 trips. So on an already overburdened roadway of East Mitchell Hammock connecting off to Lockwood, as well as Swanson, this is a significant decrease in the traffic that would be generated from any other use that you could put on this site, which again was one of the considerations that we had with staff that led to their ultimate conclusion to approve our 3 requests because of the significant decrease that we would generate in traffic impacts. Our request is approval consistent with staff's recommendations to amend the comprehensive plan and to rezone to C2. And I'm not sure if it made it into your packet, but we did have a letter of support from one of our adjacent neighbors, and that was at 1016 Lockwood, and that's the strip center adjacent to us. Happy to answer any questions. We have our engineer of record, as well as a representative from Johnson Development and the property owner as well. All on our team here tonight. We appreciate all that staff has done over quite an extensive amount of months to work with us to come up with this end product. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant? Okay, we'll open it up for public hearing. I have one request, one written request. Carl Burgunder?
Burgunder, that's correct.
Can you state your name and address for the record?
Yes, it's Carl Burgunder. My business address is 1490 Swanson Drive, Suite 200 in Oviedo. That is in Wheeler Corners. Good evening. I am the president here tonight on behalf of Wheeler Corners Property Owners Association. The president of that has been since, I think, 2007, give or take. This development originally in history, I don't know if you're familiar with it, this originally was developed by Mr. Benjamin Franklin Wheeler, Jr. He developed this in the early and mid-90s. I bought my property. I own the building that is occupied by my own office, as well as the Seminole County tax collector. That's where I'm located in that building. I came on board in 06 when I purchased my building. Wheeler Corners is a mandatory Property Owners Association, being that every property owner in the development it must be a member and is represented by the board. We have a 3-member board. With me is one of our other directors, Dr. David Fisher, is here as well. We have a 3rd member who cannot be here right now. We have received, I would just say, the minimum required statutory and ordinance required notice of this. So we kind of are behind the curve as far as learning about this project. We had a very productive meeting for the first time, meeting with the applicant and her team, and their team, and the owner, and Mr. Veely. And that meeting was productive. It was very cordial. Went a long way towards answering some of our questions. What we don't have is we have not had the opportunity to poll our owners to determine, to take the pulse of what the community thinks, the business community in Wheeler Corners, and what their opinions are and what they think about this project. We had an informal meeting of the 3 of us directors just a few days ago when this first came on our radar screen, and we decided that one of the first things that jumped out at us was the intensity of the use. This would be the first that I'm aware of, and I wasn't aware that the bank property is a C2 use, but this is the first in the Wheeler Corners development. You know, we are a mixed-use community or development of properties. We have, of course, the Oviedo Grove Apartments, which is the multifamily residential. We also have office and professional buildings and retail establishments and restaurants and so forth. So we all even have a school, and so we have a little bit of everything, I guess, in Wheeler Corners. And the concern was not only was the intensity of the use. The trips, I understand, and that certainly is a mitigating factor that makes us feel better about the fewer amount of trips and the traffic and the substantial, frankly, reduction in the traffic count, which was a very much positive. But one of the things that we came up with as a concern is the fact that the streets within Wheeler Corners are private streets, and we are required as a board to levy assessments to maintain those roads, to have a sinking fund, a reserve fund, to fund the future road maintenance. And we had some concerns and questions that we have not had time to address about what is going to happen with a self-storage facility with vis-a-vis larger vehicles accessing that facility, particularly moving trucks and things like that, large moving trucks moving in. Is that going to have any negative impacts on the roadways that we're required to collect money for and to maintain? So that was an issue. We had issues about the hours of operation, the size of the project. Some of those issues have been answered. Again, we don't know. That's to the board's, I think, to the partial satisfaction of the board, but we certainly don't have an opinion on the community at large, the owners and their opinions. But we have one of the other components of this approval, and I don't know that was really picked up on by the applicant. To the extent it was, I don't know. It wasn't brought to my attention, certainly, because we just had a meeting. But the fact that the property is subject to a declaration, and not only is there a development agreement in place from 1995, I believe, with the city of Oviedo, but there's a declaration of covenants that is in place, and that declaration requires Wheeler Corners approval, the association's approval of zoning changes in advance. It requires a declarant's approval, and of course the declarant is no longer here. We take the position that the association is the successor to the declarant in that respect. So there are a number of things that we are going to have to work with and partner with and hopefully reach agreements with the applicant to move this project forward that are kind of baked in, and there are matters of public record in the public records that require association approval. We've just started those discussions today. Today was the first day of those discussions. So my position is we don't have an official position as a board whether we approve or oppose this. I was hoping that I could convince the applicant to pull this from the agenda so that we can have those kind of discussions and take a little bit of time to get up to speed and maybe hopefully make some agreements and make this a workable arrangement. I understand they have reasons, and I respect those reasons why they can't do that. But nevertheless, that's my position, that time has been working against us at this point, given what has happened. I'll be glad to answer any questions if anybody has any, but I think at this point, absent a full comprehensive agreement with the applicant, I think our official position has to be at this point to oppose the project. That may not be forever, that we would keep that opposition up, but at this point it would have to be, I think, as a prudent matter, just as a matter of record, that we go on record as saying that.
Okay, sir, just so you understand, the item that is up for public hearing at this time is the amendment to the comp plan.
Correct, but there's three, and I'm addressing, forgive me, I've addressed all three of those ordinances all together, and I understand they need to be broken out. The first one, is a more indirect effect on Wheeler Corners. The second two, obviously 1649 and 1650, to affect us directly. And finally, one of the things that would potentially affect us is the precedent that it sets. Now, this is the last lot in Wheeler Corners. It's the last vacant lot. That doesn't mean there wouldn't be or couldn't be redevelopment at some point. There are a number of properties, and we can only speculate at what might happen. But if a C2 zoning is approved and the high-intensity commercial is approved, that potentially opens the door for future redevelopment at that higher-intensity use. And so we have some concerns about that. Again, those concerns may be addressed down the road, but at this moment, they're not fully addressed. So that's, in a nutshell, addressing all three of the ordinances. I understand that the first one is more of an indirect. It just creates the high-intensity classification. So that's our position at this point. Like I say, I don't know what else to say. This is very preliminary for me as a representative of the association, but I could certainly answer a question if anybody has any.
Thank you.
If not, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the board on ordinance number 1648? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, or the public hearing portion.
Madam Chair, if I may just explain that you have before you tonight, you have the large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, you have the small scale, which designates the property as HICM, and then you have the zoning. You all are a recommending body. The statute requires the LPA to prepare the comprehensive plan. So the first item is the transmittal of the large scale, the text amendment. The small scale and the rezoning cannot be adopted until the first item has been adopted. So when you transmit an item, a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, to the Department of Economic Opportunity, it takes time before it comes back to the city for adoption. I believe it's 60 days, about 45 to 60 days before it comes back to the city for another public hearing. So they will have time to continue their communication between now and the time it's transmitted, if City Council chooses to transmit it. So it's not one of those items where it's going to be scheduled for City Council on the 19th, and then the following meeting it's up for adoption. It's not that case. It's a large-scale comprehensive plan amendment, which means other reviewing agencies will review it. So you have St. John's, you have FDOT, FDOT, you have other reviewing agencies that will review it and may or may not have comments to it. So if there are, then we have a certain amount of time to respond to those reviewing agencies. But there will be time in between the time it's transmitted by the City Council and the time that it comes back before the city for adoption, for final adoption. Also, this is not the item for the self-storage. The self-storage item will come before you as a special exception use order. So right now, we have indicated in our staff reports the large scale, the small scale, and the zoning, what the applicant intends to do. And we just do that so that you all know. The comp plan has to be based on the most intent. So we look at the retail, but we also threw in the self-storage. The zoning, we look at the range of uses that are allowed in C2. And so we also indicated the self-storage is what the owner is proposing to do. The special exception use order, when it comes before you, will be specific for that use. So you all will see that and decide if that use should be a use that is permitted by right. You all will make that determination, and if any mitigation is required to buffer the surrounding uses, the traffic, anything that you think is necessary to buffer the impacts of that use, you will determine that during the special exception use order, which you all will see later. And that special exception use order will come back during the adoption stage of the comp plan. So you all will have that opportunity to see it at that point, too.
So, Deborah, if I understand you, if this board votes on these three items tonight. Once it gets to council, council cannot consider ordinance 1649, 1650 until 1648.
They can do a
is either
first
approved.
reading on those items, but they cannot schedule it for adoption. Ordinance 1649 is the small-scale comprehensive plan amendment designating it as high-intensity commercial. That land use does not exist today, so we're creating it now. So they can't, the city council can't adopt that because it doesn't exist. It will exist when the large scale comes back and city council adopts it at that point.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the ordinance before us at this time is ordinance number 1648, amendment to the comprehensive plan future land use element, the large scale transmittal. Do we have a motion?
Can we ask questions of staff before we do the motion?
If you want, yes, if you have questions, we can.
Okay, then I have a question.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Minton.
So, like you mentioned, the 1648 is more of a large-scale looking change. So what we're looking at here is adding language to the comp plan that will allow then the possibility for applicants to apply for that high-intensity commercial designation anywhere in the city where we may do a zoning change.
Yes, and they would have to go through this same process of the small scale, depending on how big the property is. If it's a large scale, then they'll have to go through the large scale process. But either way, they will be before this board requesting a map amendment to the city's 2025 comprehensive plan.
Is there a comparable designation in the county? I'm trying to get a visual of like what this might look like beyond just the applicant's specific usage. So, I mean, is there a compatible designation in the county's land use map that we know
In
of?
the county, I'm not sure if there's anything in the county, but we do have a land use designation in the city that is a mixed use, future land use map amendment, and I'm trying to remember which property has that mixed use. Is it the Dwell? I think it may be the Dwell. I'm not sure which one has that. There's no development on it right now. We do have one property that has that mixed-use future land use designation. I cannot remember which one.
Okay.
I do know it's vacant, and I think it's the Dwell. The Dwell is on the west side of Broadway, north of Oviedo Mall Road, that vacant property. And they were doing a hotel, apartments, but the floor area ratio for that is 1.
So that'd be probably the closest
Yeah.
thing we have.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, what's the board's pleasure? Mr. Young?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 1648 as presented.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Lopez? Mr. Sheridan?
Recommend.
Yeah, the motion is to recommend approval. Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And the City Council will consider this item
June 19th.
June 19th at 6:30 in these chambers. The next item is ordinance number 1649, the comprehensive plan amendment for the applicant. We'll open it up for public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. What's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Lopez?
I make a motion to approve ordinance 1649.
Okay. Is there a second? And that's to recommend approval? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Sheridan? Is there any discussion?
Madam Chair, I actually have a clarify something that Ms. Pierre said regarding this?
Certainly.
So 1649 is just basically asking us to recommend be allowed a change to that future land use designation of high-intensity commercial. But that's independent of the project that the applicant's proposing. In other words, we could approve it, but they don't necessarily have to do the storage center. They could do anything else that matches the high-intensity commercial.
That is correct. We, when you're doing a future land use map amendment, you have to look at you look at the most intense use. So it's not a planned unit development where you can specify the use and their help to that. It's different. This is will become like a straight future land use designation.
Right. So looking through here, I got to find the page. There's a mention of the transportation and daily trip summary. And this is on page 138 of the entire packet. Mentions that based on that designation, independent of what project goes on it, we could look at an increase of 3,775 trips per day, which is, well, over half of what the total could be. So, I mean, we're looking at more than 50% increase in trips. Well, actually, more than 100% increase in trips based on the 3207 that it would be under a normal commercial. Am I reading this correctly?
Table 5 is what you're referring
Table 5,
to?
correct.
Table 5, it shows you the existing high-intensity use under the existing commercial future land use designation compared to that of the most intense under the proposed.
Right.
Yes. So you're looking at...
so, again, based on if making that land use designation change, I mean, it could be that much of an increase in trips based on the highest use possible. Then I feel like I have the same concern that the speaker did, that we're not sure what could happen with this in that spot.
Now, I have to also mention that the comprehensive plan is based on traffic by the year 2025.
Right. No,
now, if an applicant were to come and develop, they would have to meet concurrency, which would mean they would still have to meet the levels of service standards set by the city's land development code and comprehensive plan. So it looks at traffic-based, the comprehensive plan goes further out. So it's looking at all the improvements that could be made by the year 2025. Concurrency is 3 years out for us. So those numbers may not work, and it doesn't work within 3 years. So they would have to meet concurrency. So there are other levels that would control the traffic. They would either have to improve the roadway, do some type of improvements.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we have before us the motion to recommend approval of Ordinance 1649. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
We have one nay. Motion carries. And the City Council will consider this June 19th at 6:30 in these chambers. The next item is ordinance number 1650, the zoning map amendment. We'll open it up for a public hearing. Is there anyone wishing to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. What's the board's pleasure?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Sheridan?
I will make a motion to recommend adoption of ordinance number 1650.
Okay, is there a second?
Make it second for discussion.
Okay, Mr. Lopez. Mr. Sheridan, do you have any discussion items? Mr. Lopez?
I do. I'm concerned a lot of issues. I know the attorney representing them was very eloquent in her speaking, so I give her kudos for that. However, she doesn't live in this area like I do, and most of us do. It is, in my humble opinion, a massive development for that piece of property. If you haven't been in that property during weekends, which is what's to be mostly used, there is no parking currently in that shopping center. So those are my concerns. I'm also concerned that you didn't take the time to reach out to the association there. That means it's being neglectful. So on those grounds, I have issues with this.
Okay, you know, this is the zoning map amendment.
I know.
That's before us. Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay, we have before us the ordinance number 1650, a motion to recommend approval.
Can we make sure that the applicant is given every opportunity to rebut after the speaker, if the applicant wishes to do that, from a quasi-application standpoint?
Would you like to come back and add anything at this point? State your name again for the record.
Tara Tedrow from Lounge Drosdick, 215 North Yola Drive, Orlando, Florida. With respect to parking, we understood that that was a concern when we even looked at the site in the beginning. And short of having our use with 7 parking spots, I don't know if any other retail use would be coming in there. I think that's a reason it sat vacant for quite some time. But this use specifically that would be permitted under C2, again, given that the 2 adjacent uses to us are C2 uses, is compatible and consistent and requires such a significantly decreased parking space count. One of the considerations that staff has to make independent of our project and what we're proposing, if anybody's going to come forth with a C2 use, they're going to have to be able to park that project with the FAR that they're requesting. So there is no other project that could have a high FAR with that few of a parking spaces unless they had an incredibly low trip generation like self-storage does. And we haven't been able to find any other commercial use of that nature that generates lower trips than what we would generate at the FAR that we're requesting. So the parking concerns are completely understandable, and you're right, I don't live here, so I'm not there day to day or on the weekends. And so we understand the concerns, though, of neighbors and residents, and this is certainly one of those uses that most of our customers come once and leave their stuff and don't come back often. If they don't come back ever, we deal with that separately. But generally, we have very few people coming on a day-to-day basis, which is why we only have 7 parking spots on our site and a small loading area that could maybe have 3 small U-Hauls or 5 normal-sized cars at once, and that would be an unusual day to have that loading area full. In addition, when it comes to reaching out to the association, that was a complete oversight, candidly, and that was something that was reviewed in title separately and was supposed to be handled separately with the association. Our hope is that we can, and I think some of the declaration questions on a separate private agreement are not a consideration for the LPA or for the City Council, and I think there's some questions of interpretation with the declaration, which we will be dealing with specifically with the association after tonight. Hopefully the clarity we get moving forward will even make a conversation necessary and worthwhile so that we can talk to them about a property we've been paying assessments on for 10 years and have done nothing with in that interim period. So we're looking to develop a project that our neighbors will be happy with. We think we've designed it so that it will be compatible with that area, generate significantly less traffic than any other project would. I think this is a gift almost to the level of service issues that are happening on East Mitchell Hammock and that are happening on Lockwood Road. So we would be happy to answer any other additional questions or concerns, but we have already made a commitment to the association that we will prepare lengthy and any necessary documents and letters and exhibits that they might want for their consideration. We'll have to go through the architectural review with them as well, and we would be happy to reach out above and beyond what we've already done notice requirements that your code requires us to do. And when we heard nothing, and staff heard nothing from any citizens after the public notice was sent out, no alarms were really raised until tonight. So again, happy to address all the issues with the association and those private agreements outside of tonight's hearing, but we certainly understand the concerns that have been raised on both ends.
Thank you. Any other questions?
So, I mean, is there any consideration then to table this until you have those discussions with the association? Because it seemed like that was their representative's biggest concern was just, it's a matter of time and understanding, not so much, like I think you even said, not so much opposing the project as the project, but just the timing of it.
Sure, and our conversation that we had before tonight was the ability to move forward in a productive manner doesn't exactly exist unless we know if we're going to be getting some positive feedback from the board moving forward and be able to go before city council, because that could, change the trajectory of our decision-making with the project. And there are so many more public hearings we have to go through, not just through the comp plan amendment, the map amendment, text amendment rezone, but also special exception use order, architectural design order that we also have to go through. So we have quite a few months ahead of us. And I would ask for recommendation of approval so that moving forward, we will have a firmer ground knowing if we move forward with a staff recommendation of approval and an LPA recommendation of approval of the 3 ordinances tonight, this is realistically what we're looking at with our project. Here's everything that we've submitted to staff, everything that we're going to be presenting at our public hearings, and let's find a meeting of the minds as to some of those issues and make sure that the association is comfortable. I will note that one of the letters of support is from an association member, and that's 1016 Lockwood Boulevard. So it certainly is not as if no one in the association knew what went on, but I will say there was clearly a communication mishap somewhere along the way, but we definitely reached out before tonight and approached the other property owners for letters of support or letters of no objection. So while we did make an effort, perhaps it was not as extensive as the association president would have liked, but we would like to rectify that after tonight's hearing and move forward with a meeting that's, again, separate under a private agreement that shouldn't impact the determination of tonight. But I do understand why that's a concern that was raised. But I would ask for recommendation of approval and then allow us to address those issues separately with the association, again with the understanding we have a letter of support from one association property owner, and we have made attempts to reach out in the past couple of weeks to those owners for other letters of support as well, but would like to clarify everything else after tonight's hearing.
Did you say the first reading, there would be a first reading on this next week at the council meeting, or would it be a full hearing there?
No, first reading. It's not a public hearing. It's not advertised as a public hearing. The only public hearing item is the first ordinance, which is the text amendment. That is a transmittal public hearing, and it was advertised.
Do you know when that public hearing would then be scheduled for? Is it for their special meeting on the next week after that, or would it be into July?
If
the council, if it goes to the council for first reading next week, when will their public hearing would then be?
Oh, it has to go to the Department of Economic Opportunity.
So that would still fall into that 60 days?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I just try to get an idea of the timeline of how much time there would then be to meet with the association before it would...
At least 60 days, yeah.
Our plan is not to wait that 60-day period to meet with them, though. We're trying to meet as quickly as we can based on our conversations that we had tonight before the meeting that were very productive, so that in the next few weeks, based on what the declaration requires for a meeting to be called under the terms of its covenants, then we would be able to have a meeting with the entire association, provide all the documents that the association would like to review at that time, but there is a significant window of opportunity, and we plan to take that as quickly as possible following tonight's hearing.
Are there any other questions or concerns? Okay, the motion we have before us is ordinance number 1650 for the zoning map amendment. To recommend approval of the zoning map amendment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
We have one nay.
Thank you.
Motion carries. This item will be considered by the City Council June 19th at 6:30 in these chambers. The next item on your agenda is discussion items. We don't have anything listed. Does anyone have discussion items for the board? We have one that was brought to our attention today. Deborah Pierre, who's been with us forever, is leaving the city. And Deborah, I want to tell you how much I've enjoyed working with you over the years on the various different committees and commissions that I've served on.
Yes, I've enjoyed working with you too, and the rest of the board members. We've been together forever. I would say at least about as long as I've been here, which is 18 years.
I think so.
Well, thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you very much. it's been a pleasure working with you as well over the past many years.
Thank you.
And Teresa's going to hear this vacuum sucking all that institutional knowledge up the road as
Yeah,
you
right.
leave. Okay, future meeting dates are June 27th and July 11th. Do we know if we have items for either of those?
Not right now. We don't have any items.
Okay.
Did everyone reminder real quick on the financial disclosure?
Oh, yes.
Please, we got plenty of time.
That's the way it always works until the day before.
Yes,
I see you at the opposite order.
It's not due till September.
Mine's already filled out on my desk, not taken there.
Mine's not even open. I know what's in it.
And Mr. Chairman, while we say goodbye to Deborah, we are also saying hello to William Still. He's our new planner one. He started 2 weeks ago. He's replacing Tara Bradley. So this is the new new staff member for our department. So now we're embracing change in the department.
A lot of change.
Yes.
And then I didn't realize we have an attorney at the other end. I didn't. Thank you for being here. Kind of snuck in on us there.
Well, they took my spot, so I just kind of split up here on the end. I like this better because I can see everybody and talk to you.
Okay.
That's cool with you.
Works fine for me.
We're not too crazy.
As long as we don't have the full,
You under the table.
as long as we don't have the full stuff.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Here's the
Don't watch this thing long. Everything can say